Welcome back to At Home, the podcast. Y'all, it has been a hot minute since we have sat in the studio together, sitting around the table. Angie, Brenneman, Dustin, Evie, Brant, and I, the usual crew, the gang, back together for, honestly, one last time before we put a close to At Home, the podcast in this season of life. Angie, we were just talking before we pushed record.
Yes.
Some statistics about At Home, the podcast. And this goes back a few years. We started this podcast in September of 2021. It's been a little bit. How many episodes have we done?
We've done a total of 95 episodes over 5 seasons. Wow. So this is living on beyond you and I, and kind of creating what Dustin would call a legacy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
You came in 21, right? The fall of 21, Dustin?
I did. November 7th was my first official Sunday. So I've graduated from
and
walking 4 years.
we allowed you to join the podcast, what, 2 years later?
Yeah. No. I think it was an accident, but I fought my way through, and we're here, and I think that's why it's
fun to watch. Yeah, this has been a good time. It's been a good season. 95 episodes. You think back to all the things that we've talked about over those years. We've had staff trivia. Mm-hmm. We've had Thanksgiving trivia. We've done Christmas trivia. We've done Notre Dame trivia.
Yeah, and we've interviewed a lot of people.
Talked to a number of people. Topics ranging from sermon series to hot topics on parenting and marriage. And it's been a good run.
Yeah. So there's all of these episodes, these 95 episodes. Well, this will make 96 when we release this one, but we'll live live on our website and on At Home, the podcast, where you listen on Apple or Spotify. And so it's kind of nice because it's a resource. That's the main thing. It's a resource for you, for your family, for your listening enjoyment. Right, Brant 9?
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And Angie caught me daydreaming just now.
That's my favorite part about the podcast.
I was honestly, what I was just thinking about was how some people are going to be like, it's going to frustrate them that we didn't just go to 100. We're just going to stop at 96.
Just leave them hanging.
But that's what we're doing, guys. This is the last one. All good things must come to an end.
96 is the new 6-7. I think it's going to take over.
No. If this is the first time you're listening, this is about what it is.
Yes. But like I said, it is a resource. It's going to live live on our website and out there in the listening world. And so maybe there's something that you as a family have some questions about, or even as a listener, or want even to go get to know who Walk EMC is and what we're about. This is a great place to land and listen as you drive or on a trip.
Yeah, so seasons of life, right? Angie, you're getting ready to head into a new season of career, ministry career, and life changes. And honestly, you have been an anchor for this show. And so we just can't do At Home without you. So that's the reality here. So really, Dustin and Brant and I, we were ready to take it to 100, but you know. No, I am actually kidding. No, we are not. But Angie, you're getting ready to transition back to the farm and into some other things. And so you have helped us brand At Home here at the church very well over the last number of years, helping to engage parents, families, marriages. And just want to say publicly here on a podcast that we're grateful for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I kind of thought a little bit about what this leaves, even for me, as a mark in kind of a season of ministry for me. But it also defines, Dan and I've talked about it a lot, like who we are, and that ministry happens. It's a lifestyle. It's not something that you go to church for on Sunday and do for 2 hours. It is a lifestyle. It lives out at home. And so that's kind of how we branded this idea, and this is how it started. And we can live it out in our marriages and our kids and relationships, families, our community, and ultimately our world. And so I just thank you for the opportunity to do it, Chris, because I think it's been a good season. It's been a good brand here for us. But I also think it's not a brand; it's a lifestyle. So that's why I say it's a resource, a long-term resource.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to put you guys on the spot because you know what? That's what At Home the podcast does, right, Brant?
It does.
So here, go back in your mind. I want you to think about it. I'll start, but I want you to go back in your mind. Think of a top moment in At Home the podcast, something that sticks out in your mind. One of my favorite was the word natatorium. Do you remember that?
That's a made-up word.
Yeah, and Brant and I not knowing what that was exactly. That's a made-up word, and I think you getting your swimsuit signed.
That
Grace,
was a good
that
one.
was a good
Listen,
moment.
we have trunks signed by Grace Brenneman, Notre Dame swimmer. About to get them signed by Katie Brenneman, a future Notre Dame swimmer. So yeah, life's looking good for me. Most people call it an aquatic center, but there's a special few who call it a natatorium.
Yes, that's right.
That's a
Favorite
good highlight.
memory?
I would say I don't have a natatorium story, but I would say I really enjoyed the one podcast we did. Well, I think there was multiple, but the one specifically we did on parenting and listening to you guys. I don't know why I'm so out of breath. I'm standing up. That's maybe throwing me off. But listening to Chris and Angie both share from their perspective of parenting further along than like Brant and myself was encouraging just to know there's obviously going to be many challenges coming up, but just having their experience to lean on a little bit, learn from them, and just to hear their perspective was really good for me and just kind of give us that idea of what we have to look forward to. I mean, again, I think sometimes you can look in the next stage of parenting our life and you're already stressed before it even comes, but the joys of it as well. So I think that's one of the things that I really took and appreciated.
What about you, Brant? 9?
Angie's first thought comes to mind is when you said that your backyard was 100 yards.
That's what I was hoping. One of you guys, I was actually in my head.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
meant 100 feet, but you said
Yeah, I
100
did.
yards, and I had
a
not
really big in-town yard.
At that point, I had not seen your home or knew what so I was believing you. I was like, man, Angie's got a big backyard. No, I think I'd echo what Dustin said. I think one thing that sticks out to me about all the podcasts is that, Angie and Chris, you've always encouraged us to kind of just use what we have, use your experiences to kind of drive your conversation, your perspective, and that's worthy of sharing because our listeners have a diverse, they have diverse experiences, and so use what you have, and that will speak to somebody. And so I've appreciated that. That I could come on this podcast and just play a small part and be exactly who God made me and use my experiences to talk and to speak into things. So that would be my highlight.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about highlights, yes, I did have the 100-yard conversation come up in my head as one of those. But I think over time, if I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to a podcast, I'm going to go to some of those interviews that we had with our people here at Walk EMC, like the Henshins and the Yoders and the Gongwers and the people that have lived out God's faithfulness in their lives and seen it in real time and actually have it documented and how they walked through the hard times. And I take this as a segue because Sunday, Dustin, I just want to give you a great I just want to tell you good job because you spoke about storms and how gratitude is part of the storm because the storm really is going to happen whether or not we want it to happen. It's just our attitude in it and who we trust in it. And so I say that to tie to those episodes of people who have gone through heavy storms and even are still in heavy storms, that it's real. God is faithful. And he calls us to be faithful. And so that leads me to why we're here and what we're doing, even here at Walk EMC in the last couple weeks. Chris, you kind of did a sermon series inside of November, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was on Thanksgiving. And I just want to tell you, you've impacted somebody because we will be in a conversation in our truck and we'd be driving. And my son Cole goes, well, that's a lot of Thanksgiving that you have there. And he was actually making a statement to say, we need to have some more Thanksgiving here, not just saying that we're grateful.
I was sitting here trying to think of a way, not sitting right here, but prepping for this series, trying to think of a way to do something unique. And so I wrote down Thanksgiving, and I was trying to figure out how to tie in living a life of gratitude. And I just thought, hey, what if we swap that G and the L? And it's been a challenging series for me to preach because I realize that I still have a lot of work to do. And it's also been a challenging series. So, Shauna, hopefully you're not listening to this episode because she's good at those truck moments of saying, I'm not so sure you're thanks living right now. Quite like you should have. Doggone it. These sermon series come back to bite you sometimes. But it's good accountability. It's a good reminder that we need to be living lives of thankfulness.
Mm-hmm. And Dustin, like I said, you preached on Sunday, but I'm going to list a couple of those, and I'd like to center a little bit on this whole idea that you did preach on Sunday because I think that's key, and that's things living through the storm. But we've covered things living when life is unfair. That's a true thing. Things living by remembering God's faithfulness, and then things living through the storm. And things living every day is coming. But as far as through the storm, I think it encompasses both when life is unfair and when God is faithful. I don't think the storm is actually left out of any of these weeks. Would you guys agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. And the first 2 weeks when Chris talked about, Thanksgiving when it's unfair and then remembering God's faithfulness, I think that is kind of wrapping your mind around those and letting your heart really, back to last week when he talked about remembering, I thought that one really got me big time. Because again, it's like that's not something we talk about a lot from stage, is this idea of remembering, but the power of it. And when we look back on the things that God has done, then in those really hard seasons of life, those hard moments, those storms that we don't expect, I think then it's a lot easier, shouldn't say easy, it's easy to be more intentional of remembering what God has done in those moments to help you through it. Not that it makes those specific moments any easier, but at least you're able to hold on to knowing how God has been faithful in the past. So yeah, the last week was really impactful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when Chris started the series with When Life is Unfair, as he began to speak on it, I thought I always go to either the spiritually dead person and what their perspective is, or the person who's suffering currently. And how is this going to land? And it just seems like, the Lord through Chris and through Dustin always has those same perspectives in mind as they prep. And so as Chris, starts off with saying we need to live a life of gratitude and thankfulness, even in the storm, I'm like, oh, how's that going to hit those two, people groups? And then, he said, faith doesn't ignore life's unfairness. It faces it, but refuses to let it define God. Mm. And that has been something for the last 3 weeks that my family and I have walked through, because so often when things that happen to us are unfair, we start letting it characterize who God is. Mm-hmm. And that's an unfair thing to do to God. Mm-hmm. We can acknowledge that that life is unfair, but it doesn't define who God is. Mm-hmm. So that's been super impactful to us. And then Dustin had just a bag full of quotes on Sunday, and so many people around us were taking notes, and it was just so good as he talked about life through the storm. And something that's really stuck out to me was your wave pool and lazy river analogy of, storms are unpredictable and they're unavoidable and they're uncontrollable. And then you said, following Jesus is a lot more wave pool in terms of thinking of it through the lens of a water park. It's a lot more wave pool than it is lazy river. And I'm just like, man, like those are the real life perspectives that I can see and connect to. So
that was such a good illustration. So the question that I have is, how do we condition ourselves to be ready for the wave pool? Because it isn't a question of lazy river, but why is it that we've gotten to the point as followers of Jesus we anticipate or expect the lazy river?
Yeah.
Oh, I've committed my life to Christ. That means life is going to be smooth sailing now.
Yeah.
And then we seem so shocked when the wave pool is reality.
It is interesting, and I think that's why I wanted to spend a lot of time talking about just the reality of storms, which seems so basic, and it's like, yeah, we get it. But we understand that they happen, but I think that our role when they do happen and knowing that you can't control them, and they are unpredictable, and, you can't always be ready for them. So I think we get that with real storms, but translating that to the spiritual storms that we face, because a lot of times you could have the most successful spiritual person that is like feels like they're ready, but it takes one thing to come in, one thing to happen, one death in the family, one person being diagnosed with cancer, something just to completely knock you back and be like, oh my word. And what's your foundation? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And I think just the more we realize that it is a reality and that we should be ready, not surprised, I think that at least helps us have our mind in the right place for when they do come. But again, it's easy to say that, and it's another thing when they actually do happen. So,
But I think it ties to what you said at the end. Heaven will not have cancer.
mm-hmm.
Heaven will not have death. Heaven will not have pain. So I think we have to base our perspective not only on this life, but on God, is that it's a real thing. We live in a fallen world. We are sinners, and we are on this journey with Jesus, and that maturity doesn't come out of the womb. It doesn't come at birth. I love sitting with the older generation and their experiences and their, times. But at the same time, there has been so much that you would say, I was defined by that. And we had this discussion even on Sunday in the second hour, is what is maturity? And I really believe that God specifically uses all things for the good to those who love him. We know that. I believe that 100%. And so with that, a storm, and you guys have heard me say this, can help you be bitter or better. And so I think as you grow and as you mature, that storms are not necessarily negative. It's just part of the landscape. And how we respond is how we mature, even in our faith. And what we would call that here at Walk EMC is discipleship. And it never ends. We get to the final point, not until we see Jesus face to face. And I think we forget that we're supposed to, we get to this age, like Chris, I feel sometimes, I got my AARP letter. Do you know what that felt like?
I'm a member. Yeah. I'm serious. Shauna hates that I'm a member, but I'm like, hey, discounts, right? So
you get free coffee some places,
Oh, yeah.
all that stuff. So
Hotel
I just say that,
rooms.
but you think you arrived. But
I'm telling you guys, just wait.
But I don't think, and you guys, just during this series, a couple days after, my dad gave me a journal that they were cleaning out a desk that I owned when I was younger, before I had Grace. And there was a journal in there, and it was from my grandmother, and she had just started it. And she had written the scriptures in there, and with her prayers. And it was all about fear and the things. And I'm like, she was 72, but she was still journeying with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I just think that sometimes we think we arrive, but we do not arrive until we see Jesus face to face. So I just say, look at storms as an opportunity for growth. And let me tell you, it's not easy. I don't like that kind of pruning. It's hard.
Every one of us sitting around this table was an athlete at one point. Some of us longer ago than others.
9.
But again, the whole concept of 2-a-day workouts, if anybody goes into going, man, I can't wait for 2-a-days, you're probably broken. Something's broken in you. But the whole idea of working out, stretching, getting everything fine-tuned for when the fourth quarter, 6 games into the season comes, you can withstand now. You can outlast your opponent. Why don't we take that mindset when we look at storms in our life? It's the practice, it's the challenges, it's the building up of maturity, it's the building up of muscles, it's the reminding ourselves that we are dependent not upon ourselves, but upon God. And then when the storm hits, we survive it more because we've been conditioned to it.
Do you think, this is just something popping in my head, because you mentioned it the first week, that, the idea that it's gratitude beyond the season. And, we've made it, it's a holiday, obviously. And do you think that because our culture sometimes just operates off the calendar and you celebrate the holidays when the holidays are, and that because Thanksgiving is a specific time of year, and do you think in our minds we talk about it then, but like the rest of the year, it's kind of just whatever. It's a free for all until we get back to that season. And it's like, oh yeah, I probably should kind of focus and recenter on being thankful for what we have. Do you think that has anything to do with it, or just why does it seem like this is the only time of year where this topic gets so honed in on?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think because it's a national holiday, it tends to stand out in our mind. Like now we're moving into the season of Thanksgiving. I'm going to preach a little bit about it on Sunday. And I'm still working on this, so this is very raw. But it's one thing. A lot of nations have harvest celebrations, but there's a difference between having a harvest celebration and Thanksgiving. We're a nation that was based upon Thanksgiving, not to celebrate the harvest. The harvest is something we've done. Thanksgiving celebrates the fact of what God has done, and they're two different things. And so I think we need to continue to look at this idea of God celebrating Him in every season of our life and not waiting for that time of year to roll around on a calendar.
I'm going to give you a little bit of both the side of agriculture and the lifestyle we live, but also why I see what you're saying is so easy for everybody to just kind of get into a rhythm, and it only stops when, the TV or the, decorations come out. Is I think because we've always been said in our family, it's an attitude of gratitude. You have to have the attitude of gratitude. And so with our family, we live in seasons. You know what I mean? We live in a season of spring when the planting's done and we have our first hay harvest. We're excited. We're grateful for that to end. We live in the summertime, and when we're going week by week and we have a certain thing happen, we're grateful for that time. And I just think in our Western world, our life has become the same. It's become the same every day. And so when everything becomes the same, it gets a little mundane, and you never have the change up. And I think the change up is what creates, the remembering. Mm-hmm. It creates the great gratitude. It creates the expectation, of, God's done this. Let's see what He does this next season. And so I just say that. I just think it's something that has happened in this Western world culture that like you just go to the 9-to-5 job, you do the same thing day after day, mm-hmm. And if you don't live in a culture, like if you live in Southern Cal, man, you're like in 70-degree weather every day for all year long, rather than in
That'd
Indiana.
Be horrible.
I know. We were going from 60 one day and 30 the next.
That's right. I mean, I gotta love cold and flu season.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak in a secondhand way as a son-in-law to a farmer, but I actually think it's both and. Like there's the Thanksgiving aspect that we're going to celebrate all that God has done, but what I've learned about the word harvest and what that means in terms of agriculture is it all relies on God. Mm-hmm. You put a seed in the ground, and you have no idea. I mean, you could do everything that you can do. You can't control the climate. You can't control invasive species that come up that there isn't chemicals made for yet. Sorry to the people who don't use that. There's so much that you can't control. And so when harvest comes, there is, if you're a farmer and you follow Christ, there's an element of, man, how did only one cob have, 800, 900 kernels on it? Only God could have done that. That something even came up out of the ground, that we have enough to break even or make a little profit. And so I think that's where I think what you're preaching on is so valuable, because there's a lot of things like that when you look at what we do and how we do it. Everything in reality relies on God's hand to move forward and to produce. And there's our part, and there's, God's part, and then there's the part of others that they have to pick up the baton and go themselves. But if we do our part and we acknowledge what God is doing, in that without Him, none of this is possible, I think that's where the living aspect comes into play. And I will say, you didn't do yourself any favor, because Thanksgiving seems like a really hard thing to say consistently. But I do think it hits home. Like, are you living with this mindset of gratitude? Are you living it out? Are you acknowledging what God is doing? Dustin, you talked about expectations last week. You said, where's it at? I wrote it down. You talked about how we should expect things from God. Here's what you said. Our expectation of God should never replace our appreciation for God. And while we do expect God to move, right, we we so often forget to look back and then appreciate what he's done. So whether it's, the Thanksgiving tradition holiday, or whether it's harvest, or whether it's something completely outside of that, we so often forget to look back and acknowledge God's hand in those seasons. He grew the corn. He grew the person. He's sanctifying, and to look back and acknowledge his hand in all that. It's easier to do in the suffering, right? Which is why we consider it pure joy when we do go through those trials. There's a family right now from our community who their little girl has been in the hospital, and their response and their appreciation to God's move in that family has been so inspiring and emotional to watch as a parent, and it's just been so good. But it's almost easier to acknowledge God's movement in those sufferings, but in the day-to-day, to look around and acknowledge, man, he grew that crop, he provided that, he did this. So often we forget to do that.
Tozer says the most important thing about you is how you think about God and your view of God. And I think when you think about Thanksgiving, how you view God is tied to exactly that. And I just want to share a personal journey that I've had in this last year that I love. I absolutely love Scripture. I visited Israel. I did a whole semester at the Jerusalem University College. It's real over there where you live and walk and see the Scriptures come to life. But I decided this year to do a journey through the Bible chronologically and read God's story like a book. And for me, that has been a blessing on this view of God, because I see it's his story. We forget, Thanksgiving isn't about us. We're living God's story. We're not living our story. And that part, when you read how God, he didn't need us. He created us for relationship, and you journey through all the sin and, all the rebellion and all the things. And I literally just finished this morning. I'm in Acts 8. That's how far we are in. I finished the Gospels, and let me tell you, when you read it chronologically, and then you get to the Holy Spirit and the Pentecost, you're like, "Well, man, we're getting somewhere." And you just feel his hand just moving the story in the direction he wants to go. And so I just say, I'm just thankful that he cares about us. He sees me, and that I get the opportunity to live in his story. Mm-hmm. That's Thanksgiving, that I'm living his story, not my story. And I just happen to have a part of it.
In so many ways, it's a great episode to end on, because we should live lives of gratitude moving forward. And that's a challenge. And I think that's a challenge that we live with, and that we leave you, the listener, with as well. How do you press forward being in gratitude for every season that does come your way? Don't forget God in the good seasons. Lean heavily on him in all seasons. That's really the key.
Yeah. Well, thank you, listener, for sticking with us. Like we said, you can go back, you can reference many different episodes. You can find them on our website at www.walkemc.org/at-home. And Chris, it's been a good run.
It has.
Yeah, 96 episodes.
96. So close.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
close.
Thank you for these two youngins joining us in these last couple seasons. We appreciate you guys.
It's nice to see the youth of this generation growing up finally.
That's right.
About 30 years before we get our AARP.
You'll love it. You'll love it. Yeah. Angie, why don't you send us off? How about that?
Yes. We appreciate you as a listener. We encourage you. Go back. Use this as a resource. But more importantly, we encourage you to seek after Jesus. Seek after Jesus in your daily life. Seek after Jesus in your home, in your relationships, your community, and your world. That's when we know God's on the move. Thank you.